what has happened in Jordan, which is bringing a lot of repercussions because of the attack on helicopters, on the forces, and American fighter jets. Donald Trump today talked about it. Right after that, the Iranian IRGC announced that the people in Jordan were helping them, giving them intelligence, the people, and the maybe some elements within the Jordanian army was helping them or giving them intelligence. And Donald Trump today talked about it. He had a meeting today with the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, and here is what he said about the case of Jordan.
Flip something through in Jordan, and if we had other operators, would not happened, unfortunately. But because we have the best equipment in the world, we've stopped almost everything. But when you let other people do your job, with the United States, we let other people do the job, and sometimes it doesn't work out so well. But
what is, David, your understanding of what has happened in Jordan and the way, because they removed or somehow they moved all these, I would say, fighter jets, somehow the weapons, they moved them to Jordan, somehow feeling that Iran is not going to be that accurate, or they're not going to have that much of intelligence or that sort of accuracy to hit the targets. But it seems that Iran is getting to Jordan. And this is the perception on the part of Trump and his administration that the situation is not safe. Maybe they're going to change their policy in Jordan, as Donald Trump mentioned. What is your understanding of what has happened and the way that Donald Trump is somehow not communicating or not giving any sort of intelligence when it comes to the casualties, people wounded or killed? And this is one of the major concerns right now. Your understanding of that?
Yeah, so this is day 144 of a war that Trump said would last about a week. Around that, and this war is continuing forever. And Iran has, this is not a surprise that they attacked Jordan. They've done it before. Right after the war started, the U.S. began bombing Iran on February 28th. Within I think a day, they'd expanded the war to include at least 10 other countries. They struck 10 countries in one day. Later in the war, they struck 10 countries in one day. So this is just, as you mentioned, U.S. forces have been withdrawn from the most forward deployed bases, which are the most vulnerable, in Bahrain and in Kuwait and Qatar and some other countries, even in northern Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They were withdrawn to Jordan, and there's likely was insufficient facilities or insufficient protection against Iranian missiles in those areas. And, even here in the United States, Laura Ingraham on Fox News, who's an ardent Trump supporter, she, showed a poll that said that Trump only has the support of, I think, 29% of Americans for his Iran war policy. So if it's that bad here in the United States, and even Trump supporters are calling attention that this is the most unpopular war in United States history since polling began, you can bet that in Arab countries, it's extremely unpopular as well. And so we're going to have fifth column, forces that are pro-Iranian or anti-American or anti-Israeli in countries that U.S. has military bases in. So it's no surprise to me that there may be elements in the Jordanian army or simply Iranian supporters in Jordan that provided the intelligence to help ensure that these attacks, missile attacks from Iran against U.S. forces, were successful in killing a few Americans. And as someone who proudly wore the uniform of the United States Army for a few years back in the 1990s, this is hits very personal and hits home for me. I don't want to see American soldiers being killed for no reason for a war to expand Israel's domination over the Middle East.
The war is getting worse because of the Strait of Hormuz and yesterday we've learned about Yemen coming and putting blockade on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was somehow exporting its oil using the pipeline they have that goes to the Red Sea. Right now, that's not happening. Today, Donald Trump said they're not blockading, they're not doing anything, against Saudi Arabia. But what we've learned from the news that at least 6 tankers were or ships were avoided to go to the Saudi's ports in the Red Sea. It seems that I don't know, he doesn't receive the information or something is happening of that sort, but the blockade is working right now, and they're avoiding all of these vessels and ships or tankers, whatever tries to go there. And this is an additional burden on the global market when it comes to the oil prices. And what is the battlefield? How do you see the battlefield in between Iran and the United States? As you see, the United States is attacking in the southern part of Iran. They hit 7 bridges around the city of Bandar Abbas, which is strategic. From the strategic point of view, they tried to isolate the city because the city is important for the naval, operations in the Strait of Hormuz. On the other hand, Iran is attacking Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, and hitting their targets. And we had the attacks on nuclear power plants in Iran, and Iranian attacks on the power plant in Kuwait, for example. So looking at the war somehow escalating on both fronts, on the part in Iran, inside Iran, and in GCC countries. Where are we headed, in your opinion?
Well, I think President Trump had, he burned the exit ramp that J.D. Vance provided for him with the 60-day MOU. He decided to trash that, and he trashed it over a stupid issue, which is, the U.S. Decision to pursue this Omani corridor. Iran, of course, hit 4 within the space of probably about a week and a half. They hit 4 neutral ships with drone attacks and caused no casualties. And then Trump started this war for 2 weeks. And as you mentioned, it's really President Trump that's escalated the war. He escalated with 90 attacks. Following the Iran hitting 3, just firing three drones against neutral ships, causing no casualties. He attacked 90 Iranian targets the next day on the 7th, and then on the 8th another actually it was 80 targets on the 7th and 90 targets on the 8th. And we've seen for the last 9 to 10 days consecutively, we've seen these the U.S. Missile strikes against Iran, and Trump just pledged, the White House pledged another 10 nights of U.S. missile strikes following Iran's decision to reject the 10-day ceasefire proposal that the U.S. sent through our allied mediators. But really, there's this war is just gonna, as I predicted, it's shaping up to be a forever war. The only exit ramp we had to prevent it from being a forever war was that MOU, and I think Trump could legitimately resurrect that. I think Iran would be, certainly they'd be a lot more skeptical, but the MOU terms favored Iran very well, but it also was in something that helped the U.S. overall by restoring peace to the region and giving us an exit ramp out of the war, which has been so detrimental to the U.S. and global economy. But with the Bab el-Mandeb Strait closed to Saudi ships, so that brings a lot of pressure on Saudi Arabia. There's just so many ways that Iran has escalation dominance over the United States in terms of economic levers, as well as conventional military levers as well. Obviously, the U.S. has absolute nuclear supremacy over Iran. Iran's nuclear arsenal, ISS, is fairly minuscule, no more than 60 warheads, as opposed to about 2,700 warheads combined operational nuclear weapons that the U.S. and Israel possess. So I think that the chances of the war escalating at the nuclear level are very minimal, unless the U.S. decide or Israel decide to drop a nuke on Pickaxe Mountain, which of course is impregnable against U.S. Conventional missile and airstrikes. So yeah, to answer your question, this is going to go on forever, probably to the end of Trump's presidency, unless he has a return to sanity. And I think the return to sanity is going to happen sooner or later, because we are running out of missile stockpiles in terms of our long-range precision strike munitions, as well as our defensive missile interceptors. My assessment is that we're likely less than 50% of what we had at the beginning of the war.
Somehow, when it comes to the interceptors, you see the lack of the interceptors, because all of these drones and missiles that are going to Kuwait and Bahrain and Jordan, you don't see that much of interceptors going up trying to intercept these drones, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the shortage that is influencing the battlefield as well. I don't know how much of what's going on, the reality of what's going on, is reported to Donald Trump himself. Do you think that he knows what's going on and he's continuing this war?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a stage of the war where they, his closest advisors, in terms of political cabinet members, were trying to shield him from the bad news, because he has a, notoriously volcanic temper. But reportedly, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, I think beginning in the early April timeframe, began to encourage cabinet members from sharing the bad news as well as the good news with President Trump, so that he would, have kind of would be fully informed and would not continue to fight this war indefinitely, as he's decided to do, obviously since July 7th. But I can almost guarantee that Trump is receiving, this intelligence, both the good and the bad news. He's getting the news, unfortunately not from Tulsi Gabbard, as we were promised he would on a daily basis, because she's no longer the Director of National Intelligence. He's likely getting it from CIA Director Radcliffe. But the interesting thing about CIA Director Radcliffe is he was a big enthusiast about, he was reportedly, I think it was according to either Max Blumenthal or probably Aaron Mate of the Gray Zone, that he was basically Israel's stenographer, who would essentially, take U.S. or rather Israeli intelligence, bring it to Trump and repackage it as U.S. intelligence without Trump even knowing. And yet he himself, expressed some skepticism as to whether regime change was possible. He did seem to want the war, but he understood at least that regime change was not possible. Even Marco Rubio reportedly called it BS, that Israel was saying that Netanyahu was claiming that we could take out Iran's regime within 5 days and the war would be over. And that's kind of, we heard Trump regurgitate that early in the war when he said that the war would be over after just 4 to 5 days of bombing. So what I've been saying, this is kind of a doom loop. It's like Groundhog Day. Every day's the same. It starts out with Trump's threats, ineffective U.S. bombing strikes, which according to my calculations have only destroyed at most 15 to 16% of Iran's ballistic missile arsenal, maybe 10% of their underground missile production, missile launch facilities. So really, this has been the most ineffective U.S. military operation in modern U.S. military history.
But with the latest attacks, the way that they're trying to somehow strategically isolate some cities in the southern part of Iran, do you think that would bring the sort of mindset, maybe these people who are advocating for invasion, for going to some of these islands in the southern part of Iran, is that in coordination with that sort of mindset that let's go and do something about it? There are people advocating for it. They're serious people. And every time they come on Fox News, Keith Kellogg, they're advocating for some sort of invasion. They'd say we're not going to go to Tehran. We're going to stay in the southern part of Iran. They were talking about the Qeshm Island, which is the largest island in West Asia. and it's huge for. And they're talking about the Hark Island and looking at the way they're bombing the southern part of Iran. That could be how do you see the two pictures together?
Yeah, I think the Trump administration is keeping his options open in terms of doing the type of military strikes that would be would be necessary to prepare the battlefield for a potential U.S. Airborne or amphibious invasion of either Karg Island or Kesh Island, which would be the two most likely. Kesh Island is the one that is probably the most critically, strategically important in terms of helping to control the Strait of Hormuz. And obviously, Iran controls that. It's only about a mile away from Iran's mainland, so it's reinforceable. It's well within range of all of Iran's artillery and and coastal missile defenses, anti-ship missile defenses. And it's reportedly, according to Matt Bracken, who's a former U.S. Navy SEAL, it has tons of underground tunnels, the type that have been almost impervious to Israeli attacks in Gaza, which have caused Israel to suffer almost as many military casualties and deaths than Hamas itself. So that would be a really foolish move, and almost suicidal move, if the U.S. were to send a bunch of ships to try to invade, launch an amphibious invasion of that island. We would suffer likely thousands of casualties, perhaps within a week. If one of our, amphibious assault ships were sunk, that would be almost as much, or perhaps even more, U.S. military deaths, potentially in a single day than we suffered during 20 years of the war in Afghanistan. Karg Island, I think, is a little more doable. It's a smaller island. It's 16 miles away from Iran's mainland. In terms of amphibious invasion, it would be just as suicidal, but we could perhaps use airborne, helicopter troop transports to drop a couple thousand U.S. airborne troops to take the island. There's about 1,000 Iranian defenders of Karg Island, according to the estimates that I've heard. So that would not be an easy task, but we could employ, massive airstrikes to help support an airborne invasion. Likely they have lots of man pads that could shoot down incoming helicopter troop transports. So again, we'd suffer hundreds, perhaps up to hundreds of casualties or deaths. And then once, there's another possibility that I mentioned early on in the war, which is that maybe Iran wants us to invade Karg Island. Maybe they want us to send a massive amphibious flotilla into the region, and then once we've dropped off our troops on that island, they can sink all of our amphibious, troop transports, all the ships that could evacuate those troops, leaving them largely stranded, except from air evacuation. So it would be kind of a resumption of the 1979 to 1981. U.S. hostage crisis, except it'd be U.S., a couple thousand U.S. troops that would be stranded on the island. And Iran could then use, Trump believes that if he takes one or more of those islands, he can use those as bargaining chips to get Iran to accept his maximalist peace terms. I actually think it's the opposite. I think if we were to do that, and we were, they were killing dozens or even, hundreds of Americans every week on those islands, it would be that would be something that they could use as a bargaining chip in their favor to force us to accept their peace terms, as Trump essentially did on June 14th.
Do you think that Israel is feeling so comfortable with the current situation that the United States and Iran are fighting, and they're siding? Yesterday, Smotrich said that we're not gonna get involved in the war because the United States and Iran are fighting each other, and we're feeling good right now. We don't need to get involved in that. And how do you see the way that Israel somehow is on the margins of the war? They're not part of the war. I mean, I would say even Kuwait is more part of the war than Israel right now at this stage.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Netanyahu's plan was all along. It's the best. There's two things in the art of war, essentially. Sun Tzu wrote, an ancient Chinese general, that are the best ways to defeat an enemy. One way is to get the enemy, your enemies, to fight each other. That's probably the best way. But probably the second best way is to get another country to fight your battles and your wars for you, while you sit on the sidelines and watch it happen. So I think this is Trump has fallen into Netanyahu's trap for a forever protracted war with Iran. And Vice President Vance gave a really good interview, I think it was last week, on Joe Rogan, and in which he basically said that that is Israel's plan, that they've deliberately tried to assassinate Iran's moderates, Iran's negotiators, trying every possible way to frustrate Trump's peace agenda for the Middle East, in the hopes of embroiling the U.S. in a never-ending, forever war with Iran. The U.S. weakens Iran, even if the U.S. is very weakened in return, as long as we keep our troops there, our forces in the region, Israel's one of the chief beneficiaries. Now, I would argue that China is a greater beneficiary of the U.S. Depleting its missile arsenal, because once we run out of missiles, there's going to be almost zero deterrence for China to blockade or invade Taiwan, because they'll know that Trump won't be foolish enough to fight a war in which we don't have any air defense missiles for our Navy ships, aside from the ones that are currently in the vertical launch system tubes right now, that will be unable to refill those with offensive or defensive missile conventional missiles.